Hare Krishna, welcome on this very, very auspicious day, the anniversary of the incorporation of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. I'm Pancharatna Das, coming to you live here in New York City, the birthplace of ISKCON. It was 1965, July 13th, according to the signed incorporation papers, that our society was registered with the state of New York with 7 purposes. And today we're going to be exploring those 7 purposes. And particularly, we're going to be looking at a vision for how those purposes of ISKCON might be revealed in the future. That was put together by a group of devotees here in North America. 2 of those, Her Grace Urmila Devi Dasi and Caitanya Bhava Das, are here with us today. And we're going to be having an exciting time, I think, exploring what they did and looking at it. And I have lots of questions around the work that they did. So thank you very much to all of our viewers, and welcome. And welcome to you, Urmila and Caitanya Bhava Prabhus. Thank you for being here, for taking the time. As you know, the GBC SPT serves ISKCON with strategic initiatives. And when we define strategic, we think about how do you get from A to B? You know, you have a starting point and you have a vision. And so Prabhupada set out a direction in his 7 purposes, and you have attempted to kind of give us a vision of what that might look like at some stage of its development. So, may I begin? Any introductory words that you'd like to say, Urmila and Caitanya Bhava Prabhus, or just we go right into it?
Well, we're just so happy that you're doing this. That's very, very happy.
I'm happy. It's important work. I mean, vision drives everything, right? And so
Yes.
when we have a vision of where we want to be, then I think in the closing of your booklet, you mentioned that once you have a vision, then the strategy to get there becomes much more clear. If you don't know where you're going, you don't know how to get there, right? So,
if you don't know where you're going, you probably won't get there. Yes.
Yeah, or you may get anywhere.
Anywhere. Yeah.
So, can I begin with the first question? Just give us a summary of what is this work that you did. Tell us about it. And oh, by the way, the booklet itself, the work that you've done, is available. We have a tech assistant here who will post in the comments the link to a page on our website where you can find the booklet and you can download it and peruse it to yourself. So, but go ahead.
So Hare Krishna, I'll just try to answer this, and Mother Urmila can also add to it. So the idea here was that, as you yourself mentioned, Prabhu, that everything really starts with a vision. There's a nice quote from Bhagavad Gita 2.66 purport, where Srila Prabhupada says that disturbance is due to want of an ultimate goal. So unless there is an ultimate goal or a vision, then there will be so much disturbance, so much confusion. So Srila Prabhupada's mission was to make the entire world Krishna conscious. And now it's up to us to fulfill that legacy. So if we really want to do this, we really need to have a clear vision of what it means to make the whole world Krishna conscious. So there was actually a leadership summit organized by the North American GBC in 2021. And the idea there was to come up with certain teams, certain projects that devotees want to be part of, and that are important for the ISKCON movement here and also globally. And then one of the teams that was formed was to have a deep dive into the 7 purposes of ISKCON and really try to meditate on what it means if these 7 purposes were to be fulfilled, if they were realized in the real world. So this document was basically, it came out of that effort. We were trying to see, okay, what would it be if these 7 purposes that Srila Prabhupada wanted ISKCON to fulfill if they had been fulfilled, because that's the society that we want to aim towards. There's a lot of description in our Shastra regarding the ideal society, and that is there so that the readers can envision, okay, this is what I want to be a part of. We are not there yet, but we can try to envision, okay, this is what ISKCON can do. This is what we can do if we really want to bring Krishna consciousness all over the world. So that is kind of how this project came about, and this is what the booklet is about.
Okay, good. Anything you'd like to add to that, Urmila?
Well, we started with about 10 members on our team. By the end, I think we had 6, and we were coming from diverse backgrounds and lengths of time in the Hare Krishna movement. So we found it very enlivening to work like this.
Tell me, that brings me to the methodology. How did you approach the task? How did you have a particular strategy for this, for envisioning?
Yes, Prabhu. So when we first started thinking about this, the first idea that we got was thinking of it in terms of varnashram, because that's it gives a really nice framework in which how we should see the world and how people would be involved in different activities that they do. So we first divided our work into the different varnas and ashrams, the family, retirement. And then we had our group, and then we came up with individual documents, individual vision documents for each of these varnas and the different ashrams as well. And while we were trying to peruse them, try to, modify them, perfect them, we realized that it would be a lot more useful, a lot more strategic to look at the 7 purposes more directly and integrate this understanding and this vision of the different varnas and ashrams within them. So then we started tackling individual purposes one by one. So we divided the purposes among the different team members. And then we looked at each other's work together. We would have meetings, weekly meetings, and then we would say, okay, what do we have for each of the purposes by different people? And then we would get inputs from everyone and integrate the vision that we had developed already regarding the different varnas and ashrams. So yeah, it was a very collaborative effort, and really trying to see, okay, what each could, because the devotees, as Mother Urmila mentioned, came from very diverse backgrounds. So everybody had very diverse kind of inputs as to what the purposes could be like. So yeah, this was kind of the effort that led to this document.
Well, that brings up the next question. Then is, you mentioned diversity in the group. That, I guess, would be one of the challenges you must have faced. But what were some of the real challenges in doing this?
Well, you have to. We decided to do this written in the present tense, as if it had already happened.
Yes.
And I suppose some of the challenges of doing that is you may be hesitant to think that big and really think of it as a possibility. We're constrained by our own fears and our own insecurities. And well, could that really happen? But we just let's really do it. Let's think of it as if it's something that's happening now. We also had some challenges with a member who kept going to, well, there's this problem, there's this problem, there's this problem, there's this problem. And we kept refocusing on, we're not thinking about the problems. Right now, we're just thinking about where we want to go. And once we established that, things started rolling very nicely.
Okay. And I'd like to explore that just a little bit more, because, I mean, when you look at vision, you often do begin with what your problems are today and what a future might be where those problems are not there. Did you still see some connection between current problems particularly problems in the world?
Well, yes, of course. But again, our focus was not that. Our focus was on the positive, not on the negative. And I found that when been facilitating discussions on this in various parts of the world, people almost universally, with maybe one or two exceptions, will say how refreshing it is to focus like that. I have had one or two people who said, "Oh, this is just impractical, and we have too many problems, and we can't do this." But that's the exception. Looking at having discussed this with probably close to 200 people altogether in various parts of the world.
I'm curious about the time frame, because when you're looking to a future, but how far away, where is this future? And that, which brings up another question, is you're trying to envision what Krishna consciousness will be in the future, but don't you also have to envision what the world will be like in the future?
Well, it's very much like that. I mean, as you go through the document, you'll see that it's very much related to the world. At Caitanya Bhava Prabhu, I don't think we didn't choose a particular date, did we?
No, we did not.
We didn't do that, no. I mean, when I have group work on this, when I have workshops on this, we do pick a date. We usually pick 5 years. And we just say, okay.
5 years.
We wouldn't get this whole document in 5 years. The way I've done it is I have them read the document ahead of time. And then we all get together and say, all right, this side of the room is now 2024, let's say. I was also doing this in 2023, but 2022, but like it's 2024. And that side of the room is like 2030, 6 years from now. It's 2030 over there. And when we go over there, then we're going to be, depending on where we were, Spain or Australia or Chicago, we're going to have a Krishna conscious Australia. Okay, so then we walk to the other side of the room and we sit there and, okay, now it's 2030. We're speaking in the present tense. Australia is Krishna conscious. Look around and what do you see? And we use the 7 Purposes document as kind of priming the pump. So, and then different groups came up with different visions and different perspectives. But when we were writing this document, we were just thinking of the ideal, whether it's going to be 50 years from now or 200 years from now or 5 years from now. We were looking just what would the ideal look like. We didn't put a time on it.
Okay.
And also, I feel the timing itself can change based on how effectively or how eagerly we are trying to fulfill these purposes, right? We can actually make it much faster if we have the right vision. So maybe right now we are thinking that, okay, this will take 200 years. But if devotees really want to do this, they really want to start thinking in this way, maybe we'll get there faster. So the timing is in many ways up to us also.
Yeah. Okay. I'll get to another question in that regard, but this is related. That now you're in North America. All the members of your team are based in were based in North America.
Yes.
So is the work centered around sort of a North American or Western perspective, or is it global, or how do you see it?
So the initiative came out of an ISKCON North American leadership event. So at that point, the idea of that event was to look at ISKCON North America and envision the future of ISKCON North America. But as we started working on this, we realized what we're doing here is a lot more fundamental, and therefore we cannot restrict our vision to just North America. And therefore the document, we realized very quickly, and then we switched our thinking and tried to make it as global as possible, because we want Krishna consciousness to be all over the world, not just all over North America. So if you go through the document, you'll see at many places there are some fine-tunings that are specific, to different countries, different environments, and we tried to keep that in mind.
Okay. So it's it's the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So,
I've been facilitating workshops on this in some places in North America and in Europe and in India and in Australia, New Zealand. I think also did in can't remember, in Malaysia or Indonesia. So and was greeted with enthusiasm everywhere. Nobody said, "Oh, this is not relevant for our area of the world."
Mm-hmm. So when I went through it, I made different highlights and notes, and maybe let's see how our time goes, and we can get into more specifics. But one thing that kind of really popped out to me, and it's kind of been a part of my trying to envision the future of Krishna consciousness in the world, is the concept of being, you could say, non-sectarian, or the idea of multiple faith approaches to Krishna consciousness harmoniously working together. I mean, our movement is the movement of Harinam. And we know that Srila Prabhupada often said, you can chant any name of God. And yet that kind of practice hasn't quite taken off, and nor have we really promoted it. But the world today, I mean, outside of India, followers and devotees of Krishna are a small minority, and compared to the Abrahamic traditions. How did you see that all weaving together in a future Krishna conscious world? I mean, to say this, the 7 purposes of ISKCON, at least the first purpose of ISKCON, that is really non-sectarian, spiritual values and techniques of spiritual life, and to correct the imbalance of values in life, and to bring about a real peace, unity and peace in the world. And all of that's, Krishna is not mentioned there. He's mentioned later on. So that was particularly something I'd like to hear your thoughts about.
Well, the first time I met Srila Prabhupada, he was talking about being non-sectarian. He said that to my father. We were in Chicago, and my father said, can I come to the temple even though I have my own religion? And Prabhupada said, yes. He said, just like we're in Chicago and many planes are going to Chicago, they just have to know that they're going to Chicago. He said, so if you're trying to know God and love him, there can be many religions. And any time, historically speaking, that any religious group has tried to be the only religion in the world, it has had to do so through cruelty and torture and persecution, at least in our modern known history of the last few thousand years. We don't have any other instance. I mean, there's the amount of persecution that was done, say, by the Roman Catholic Church and even by some Protestant groups, and, of course, by Muslim groups. Anytime it's like our religion is the only religion and everyone has to accept that, it doesn't work except by torture and persecution and fear and just, horrendous behavior. And then it doesn't even last. After some time, people revert to their own type of faith. So better to have the different religions of the world find bhakti in their faith. Find where there's bhakti, find where there's the holy name, find where there can be a connection. And if we, as Gaudiya Vaishnavas, can lead that effort, that would be something very wonderful and very much appreciated. I mean, Prabhupada was one time saying how we wanted a Krishna conscious person as the head of government. I forget in which country. And some guest said, oh, does that have to be a member of the Hare Krishna movement? And Prabhupada said, no. He said, mathematics is mathematics in any university. It has to be someone who has a consciousness of God. So if we're aiming to spread the 7 purposes of ISKCON all over the world by imposing our particular view of religion, it's likely to not be something that we really want to do. But if we're going to bring knowledge of Krishna specifically to the world, and we're going to bring bhakti to the world, and we're going to bring sankirtan to the world while encompassing various types of faith, that's something that's actually quite doable and would be likely to be welcomed by all but some fanatics. I mean, we do have people in ISKCON, say in Uttama Prabhu, who's been working very hard on this for a very long time. And there's others I can think of as well who put a lot of effort into having this, where do we find a shared understanding and how can we go forward to make actually a God-conscious society.
Mm. Mm.
And also,
Yeah.
like, if you
Go
look at
ahead.
the ISKCON interfaith statement, which is like the only official statement ISKCON has come up with in the past couple decades for the entire world, there also it is very clearly mentioned that ISKCON does not claim a monopoly over truth. And we would expect, if something is the truth, absolute truth, we would expect it to come and be visible and manifest in different ways at different places. So we are definitely not trying to discredit any religion, rather than, as Mother Urmila said, try to find what is common, what is true in all of them. And if you look at our document, many places we mention how this harmony can be brought about by, again, focusing on the similarities so that everybody can actually work together. By chanting of the holy name, which is so common in so many religions.
This is again one of those areas that perhaps needs more strategy and more unpacking. I wanted to be to also look when you were doing this work. I'm sure you're aware that the 7 purposes of ISKCON, as we know them, were not the first time that Srila Prabhupada laid out purposes for the Krishna consciousness movement. He did so when he organized the League of Devotees, and then he drafted something, the Constitution of Association, which we believe, although there's no date on it, it's signed by Srila Prabhupada, but there's no date on it. But we kind of have assumed that it was drafted shortly before the 7 purposes, the incorporation papers. We've tried to. And by the way, did you look into this? Did you get any additional information? We've researched this in the SPT about trying to understand, how did it happen? How did the 7 purposes actually come about? But my point was that there are some things in the Constitution of Association, and particularly in the League of Devotees, which aren't explicit in the 7 purposes. And in general, were there things that, as you were doing this exercise, you felt, well, the future of Krishna consciousness in the world, the vision for that might involve some other purposes or other areas of activity, you could say, that are not so not encompassed in these 7 purposes?
Well, I don't know. The first purpose, as you pointed out, is very broad.
It is very broad, but it is education. It's education. It
is education, but there's also, the purpose, we're building a more natural way of life. There are purposes having to do with communities. There definitely are things that are not in the 7 purposes explicitly. But, it's possible that there's some big area that's not directly there. That's possible. But I would say that everything could at least be related. If we're going to talk about having businesses, governments, agriculture, crafts, education, science, medicine, all of those things, as Caitanya Bhava Prabhu said, we started looking at Varna and Ashram, which encompasses everything in society.
Right.
And then we found it was actually easier to work directly with the 7 purposes and bring that stuff in. We really didn't run into anything where we said, hey, this doesn't fit anywhere. We could leave it open that that's a possibility, but we didn't have any such situation, which I suppose is astonishing in and of itself, with Prabhupada's genius in how he crafted those.
Well, I came across one in my reading that I felt perhaps it was not so explicitly brought out in the vision. I shouldn't say that it's missing from the purposes of our movement, because you could, like you said, you can kind of weave everything into it. But there wasn't a lot I saw, a little here and there, about how government would manifest in a Krishna conscious world. So,
yeah, that's a very good point. You may be familiar, Dr. Ruchira Datta, aka Rukmini Devi Dasi, and I produced this book called Career Dharma.
yes.
And so there we definitely go into more detail. That's all about the Varnas. We go into more detail there about the field of government and how that would function. So yes, you're correct. I mean, the government, of course, would have to do a lot of the things we mentioned in the 7 Purposes document. I mean, if we're talking about air and water and animal care, and then we're talking about laws in terms of meat eating and intoxication and so forth, that would have to be done by government, of course.
That brings me to a question that's...
interrupt you for a moment. Historically speaking, if religions are going to have great influence in the world, it only happens when someone in government takes up that faith and brings it to the world. Like Prabhupada said, only the Kshatriyas can institute varnashram. So without, at some point, government getting involved, a lot of the way that the Hare Krishna movement spread was through famous people, and most of whom were entertainers, like people like Allen Ginsberg and George Harrison, Hema Malini, people like that. But if we're going to actually create a Krishna conscious world, there's going to have to be some involvement, some Rajarshi, there's going to have to be some involvement of devotionally minded government.
And I feel like that is something that we may not be able to predict as to how that might play out, the role, the involvement of a major government official kind of helping this vision. But some of the things that are in the document describe how, if a government like this were to exist, or when it will exist, what are some of the things that it will do? What are some of the laws? What are some of the recommendations that it will try to bring out in the society? So that is there in the document.
Connected to this topic is ISKCON's, as an institution, ISKCON, the institution of ISKCON, and its role in manifesting this vision. I know in the first description that you gave of the first purpose, you talked about how education would manifest primarily through, you could say, independent devotional efforts outside of the institutional framework, you could say, of ISKCON as a society. Did you come across that in other purposes, and maybe in a percentage-wise, you could say how much, and how does that also work?
Well, I don't know about percentage, but it's something that's already happening. It's already happening all over the world, so that the official legal entity of ISKCON trains people who then go out and train people. And if the official legal entity of ISKCON has training courses and all of these things, and we mentioned different kind of classes under the simpler and more natural way of life. We mentioned all different kinds of classes under the first purpose, training in every stage of life and in every type of career. So we can give that kind of training, and some of that's already happening, of course. And then people can go out and start their own training. And again, this is already happening. Their own training and coaching systems to go out and spread that even further.
But you do use, at least I didn't, note it every time, but you use the terminology of members of ISKCON members.
Ooh. How do we define that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a big question. When I was doing my doctoral dissertation, one of my questions, because I did a census of all of the teachers involved with ISKCON affiliated schools all over the world. And one of the questions was just, are you an ISKCON member? And people could just say yes or no. And I was speaking to the various professors and sociologists, and they were saying that every religion has a difficult time defining membership. It's not something just for us, who is a member. Is it somebody who's gone through some ritual, like we have initiation, or there's confirmation, or bar mitzvahs, or being baptized? And are there records of all of that? Are there people who keep up the following after doing that? What extent of following? What level of following? What level of commitment? And this is something I worked with. It didn't get finished, unfortunately, but I was working with a GBC committee on unity and diversity. And we were looking at different levels of commitment and then relationship with other organizations and so forth. But it's a very, very difficult thing to define. I mean, Prabhupada uses the word members in the purposes. So what exactly does he mean by that? And unfortunately, probably the simplest way to answer that question is just to say to people, do you consider yourself a member of ISKCON?
Yes.
Or not? And we will, I think I can predict with reasonable certainty as a social scientist, we'll never be able to have an accurate count. We can have a ballpark figure, like there's figures of how many Catholics there are in the world and how many Protestants there are in the world. But I will absolutely guarantee you that those are very general ballpark figures. And they're coming from some sort of census where a person is just saying, I'm a Catholic, which might just mean they were born in a Catholic family and they haven't done any Catholic rituals or seen the inside of a church in 20 years. So, that this is to just kind of accept that we are never going to be able to really accurately define that. Although we could define, people who live on ISKCON property, or people who are, maintaining themselves from ISKCON, working full-time for ISKCON, being maintained by ISKCON. We could certainly define that. And we should be able to define a number of how many people who've taken initiation, though, then to just figure out how many of those people are still following or even still alive is a much more difficult matter.
But related to this is other Vaishnavas, other Gaudiya Vaishnavas and other Sampradayas. And I mean, the vision is certainly a Vaishnava vision. It's Krishna consciousness. But within that framework, there are many, many Vaishnavas. So did you explore that in your visioning exercise?
Well, there's many branches of the Caitanya tree, and those are growing, and many of those branches are becoming more and more internationally based, following Srila Prabhupada's lead. I mean, Prabhupada was the one who started that and had the big success. And so we've seen now, and none is anywhere as close to as large or as influential as ISKCON, which I find interesting because Srila Prabhupada, when he wrote Chaitanya Charitamrita, was trying to get these other branches to accept ISKCON as a branch of the tree. The situation is reversed. But certainly if Mahaprabhu's movement is spread all over the world, then there's room for the many, many branches of our Gaudiya Sampradaya. I think when many of us think about the Gaudiya Sampradaya, we just think of the Sarasvat line.
Yes.
We just think of it's funny to me that people will just say the Gaudiya Mat as if it's a monolithic entity. Whereas after the disappearance of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, we should all know the history that it was split into many, many different Gaudiya Mats. So there's many, many different Gaudiya Mats and different branches with different acharyas and groups and so forth. And then there's other branches of the Gaudiya Sampradaya that are not related to the Saraswat line. There's, the line, the Nityananda Parivar and the Gadadhar Parivar. And if you go to Manipur, where Prabhupada talked about it possibly becoming the first Krishna conscious government, you have the followers of Narottama Das Thakur, who are then, coming in a different way. So hopefully that all of these will be enlivened and engladdened. I mean, at this point, ISKCON is certainly the flag bearer. Hopefully it stays that way, but that's by Srila Prabhupada's potency. And I'm seeing that Sri Vaishnava groups are now starting international preaching and making disciples who are not Indian. That's growing. I'm running into, people, Americans and Europeans who are not of Indian descent, who are becoming initiated into the Sri Sampradaya. And they go, okay, well, that's also an interesting phenomena. And all of that, from my perspective, at least, is due to Srila Prabhupada. That Prabhupada showing that the Vaishnava understanding is not ethnic. It's not geographically or ethnically restricted, has opened up the world. And yes, why not?
Now, we do see, however, that in today's world, we haven't yet seen so much cooperation between these different branches and Vaishnava entities towards a unified vision. I mean, when you look at the vision, this exercise, do you see that? Well, let me put it this way: were you trying to craft a vision that could be acceptable to other groups?
Yes. The very short answer is yes. And having some shared vision can enliven everyone to find their part. And it will not happen, nor should it happen, that everybody works together on everything. The differences are there for a reason. But different people can work on different aspects, at least with cooperation and respect.
And also, if you look at the purposes, they are purposes of ISKCON, but most of the purposes are extremely broad and general, and just directly Krishna conscious, rather than anything to do specifically with the organization that may be promoting it. So it's very easy for these organizations, sister organizations, to find a place within this and work together.
I'll just a second to mention here. Well, we're back. I don't know what that was, but okay. For a minute, at least my screen went a little funny. Yeah, but just to our audience, that we will be taking time in five minutes or so to start answering questions. So if you have a question, you can type it in the comments, either in Facebook or YouTube, and we'll see them, and we can address them. So you can start now if you like. But we've talked about other Vaishnava groups and so on, and we finding common ground and so on. But when I went through this, I'll tell you that in some years ago, I thought that if I ever got maybe I'm incapacitated, I couldn't run around like I'm doing now, and I wanted to write. I once had an idea of writing a novel, and the novel would be set sometime in the future, when at sort of a tipping point future, at a point where the devotees of Mahaprabhu had grown in number to a place where they actually did have close to or sizable numbers and could really exert influence on the governments, etc., of the world. And what would be the reaction? And what would how would it play out with those who were in our terms demoniac, who you really don't want that, and usually those are the people with the guns, and often, and other lots of money and all kinds of things that they could take into use to the agents of Kali, you could say. Did that ever come up? Did you think about, okay?
We didn't really, like I said, we didn't really focus on obstacles, Prabhu, because if you sit around focusing on obstacles, you're never going to work out your vision. It's like I drove out yesterday and there was a huge rainstorm and I had to go really slowly on the highway and there were puddles, but I was focused on my goal And I don't know if you've ever done an exercise where you break a wooden board with your bare hand, but anyone can learn to do that. I mean, I've never studied karate or anything like that, but I have broken a board with my hand. And the way you do that is you focus on a space beyond the board. And you just focus on your goal and the obstacle disappears. So, what happens when we focus on obstacles is we become paralyzed. And we just say, well, we're not going to go forward with this. It's more a question on focusing on the fact that Srila Prabhupada told us there would be a golden age and that we're the agents to do it. And look, there's so much in this document that so many people of the world want. I mean, if you look at, again, the simpler, more natural way of life, there's a growing desire for the kind of things that we talk about in the document there, where people can learn the old crafts. It's growing already in the world. We talk about having spiritual fitness centers. That's already growing in the world. People are already having meditation centers, for example. And vegetarian restaurants and healthy cooking. And I mean, this is already happening. We have people in general who are moving in this direction. And I believe that it has a lot to do with the distribution of Srila Prabhupada's books and the distribution of prasadam and all of the harinams that we've done, that we have influenced the world to go in these directions. So a lot of what we talk about in the document is already something that the world is desiring. More natural healthcare, just to see God, the purpose of seeing God, seeing Krishna as described in the Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita. And we talk about there seeing Krishna as personal God with two hands playing a flute and peacock feather. But we also talk about seeing Krishna as the taste of water and the light of the sun, seeing the rivers as his veins and so forth. So to really get this holistic view of nature as divine, and there is a move like that. And of course, there's always going to be demons. I mean, that's just the way of the world. There's always going to be opposition and there's always going to be demons. But that's, and part of this is going to have me having Krishna conscious kshatriyas as well, for sure. But again, if we focus on the goal, what I found in teaching this, and teaching it is really the wrong word, it's more facilitating workshops on this, is that all of a sudden people expanded. Instead of just thinking, well, I can come and wash pots after the Sunday feast, and I can give some money, and maybe I can bring some flowers for the deities, and that's all I can do. Maybe I can distribute some books on the weekend. People started thinking of, oh, wow, how can I match my interest and my talents and my skills to something in this document? What can I do to bring these purposes to fruition in my own family, in my own business, in my own work? And as I had a gentleman say to me in New Zealand, he said, I never before was asked, what can you do for the mission? How can you be part of the mission? So we already have hundreds of thousands, maybe 1 million, maybe 2 million people. I don't know how many people we have in our congregations worldwide. My guess it's in the millions. And if each of them could find a little piece of this vision and own it and say, we're going to work on it, then they would then spread that influence to others. And it would be extremely, extremely powerful. I mean, look, our movement was assailed by out and out demons in the former Soviet Union. I mean, really, I don't know if you read Salted Bread, but really demons. And now, our Russian members are some of the most numerous in the world.
I will take that cue. And first of all, very, very happily welcome Rameshwar Prabhu, who's posted a comment in that regard. Thank you, Rameshwar Prabhu. He's commented, when I asked Srila Prabhupada if historically a violent revolution in the future would bring about a Krishna conscious movement, His Divine Grace said, oh no. Through preaching, through mass transcendental book distribution, and public Harinam Sankirtan over generations, people's religious, spiritual sentiments will awaken. And life after life, the masses would one day demand a Krishna-conscious government which would end legal sinful acts and which would establish and protect the true purpose. Yes.
Excellent.
It's a big. So this is So this is a direct answer to our questions. Thank you, Robert Sharma.
Prabhupada confirms.
Yes, Hare
Yes.
Krishna. This one last question before we go to others' questions, and please, those in the audience, if you have questions, please do type them into the comments box, either wherever you are, Facebook or YouTube. And you mentioned that you've conducted workshops where you go through this, and in the book itself, it talks about planning. This is the purpose of having a vision, is to develop strategies to get to that vision.
Exactly.
Can you cite any instances where any communities or individuals or so on who have been inspired by this work to make such plans?
Well, right here in Hillsborough, North Carolina, we had a Sunday feast workshop session where we divided into 7 groups, and each group focused on one of the purposes. And right after that, we established, for Purpose 5, we established a little Govardhan Hill with Radhakund and Shamakund and put up signage for it. Some of the work also, we already had a devotee care committee, but some of the work from that group went into more informing of the devotee care. When we had workshops in Chicago, during the workshops, the devotees, I wasn't involved with that particular group, but the devotees were doing something with the rooftop and something with the outside gardens, also in terms of a simpler and more natural way of life. So those are 2 I can think of off the top of my head, but I know any place we had this workshops that different groups made certain plans for how they were going to work together. It was one of the ways we ended the workshop, was to make plans individually and with groups. Unfortunately, I wasn't in a situation of following up on those because I was moving on to the next place. But that did happen in every single time we had a workshop.
And did you any big ones? Like, because some of this vision is big. Did you see anyone coming up with some really?
I wasn't focused on that. I mean, that would be a good thing to focus on, to have some workshops where there was real follow-up and real strategy done. Okay, let's pick this piece of it. Who's going to work on it? What's going to be our strategy? What's going to be our steps? What's going to be our benchmarks, and so forth? I think that would be a good next step that the SPT could look at.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, quite frankly, I see in ISKCON many times we're just doing immediate crisis management.
Yeah.
And I've run into the opposite situation where, I talk to leaders and they'll go, I don't have time to do any visioning because I don't have enough help. And I said, well, if you do visioning, you'll get help.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm going to start taking some questions. We have devotee Ruchira Datta, who asks, number 5 mentions a holy place, and the text mentions several holy places. How many such holy places might there be? How would these interact with other faiths and the larger societies in the locales where they exist?
Well, such a nice question. And unfortunately, we have the severe oversight in our paper of not mentioning Govardhan Eco Village, which I personally found out about and visited after we published this paper. And I told them they should put a big plaque up at the front there saying, this place has achieved Srila Prabhupada's 5th purpose for the Hare Krishna movement. But even in Govardhan Eco Village, they haven't taken things as far as we put in our document. I mean, we took things in the document all the way to a transcendental Disney World. So I don't know any place that's taken it that far, but Govardhan Eco Village is amazing. How many? I don't know, because we didn't know about Govardhan Eco Village when we put the document together. So there might be others that we don't know about. As far as with other faiths, I mean, Srila Prabhupada wanted, say, in Mayapur for the project to become like a tourist destination. And so just like people, spend a lot of money going to Disney World and Disneyland, or places like that, eventually that's what should happen. That is already happening. I mean, Govardhan Eco Village gets a lot of tourists from all different faiths and many professors and scientists, researchers. Same with New Vrajnam in Hungary. They almost always have people studying the place, not only as a holy place, but as an eco village. So I would see that it would be a model, that setting up these holy places according to Purpose 5 in various parts of the world can be, it's already started. I mean, it's definitely already started, and GV has taken it to the greatest extent of any of the places, where it can be a place where other faiths and, as I say, other researchers and scientists and etc. to come and explore what does Krishna consciousness really look like.
It came to my mind that this, perhaps ISKCON's influence or just Krishna's desire, but there are many groups that are attempting, and now the government of India is attempting this type of work in Ayodhya. Ayodhya is certainly developing as it's already a holy place, but it's also developing. And then the Swami Narayan group has erected their Akshardham facilities around the world. So that would be an interesting area to see how these efforts intersect with ISKCON's vision. So Rameshwar Prabhu added something here I wanted to share. Srila Prabhupada explained to me that the concept of beginning in one's next life where one left off, that's how he's explained it, would take generations, but eventually humans would be born with awakened religious and spiritual sentiments, and they would demand a Krishna conscious government. Then he has a question, and and that's the effect of mass distribution. So, with the amazing evolution of religious varnashram, there must always be mass sankirtan, generation after generation. So these are some good comments. In that respect, did you? I know that the books are very much a part of the document. Particularly, of course, the last seventh purpose is dedicated to books and information in general. You talk about online resources and all kinds of things like that. You talk about reading facilities, and many things are there. So when you have these workshops, how do you find the role of book distribution and the spreading of the teachings through these different methods? How does that has that played out in the workshops?
Well, that's one of the main areas that's kind of a low-hanging fruit, that people can say, well, all right, we're going to have a way for book distribution. Caitanya Bhava, didn't you have some other list of low-hanging fruits that you compiled from the document?
Yeah. So, I mean, these are some of the things that, as we said, are already happening in some ways or the other. And so they would include, for example, in the first purpose was talking about education. So schools for children is something that we mentioned, and that is already happening at many places. Similarly, spiritual ashram internships. So that is something that is also happening in a few places in North America. But also, I heard, we recently came across news that even in Switzerland, they're coming up with this Krishna conscious gap year or an internship opportunities. Then university education was another one. So there's, through the efforts of BI, Bhaktivedanta Institute, a lot of researchers, researcher devotees, they're now coming together with this, like a global BI. And there's actually now departments. There's a department of Indian Knowledge System and Mental Health at IIT Mandi, which is being run by a devotee professor, director actually of the institute. And they're collaborating with other US universities to undertake doctoral research topics on like neurobiology of chanting. There's also some research happening on reincarnation. So, and this media entertainment, bridge books, festivals that are promoting Krishna consciousness, the rural communities, a lot of them already exist. That was also one of the purposes. So we identified some of these low-hanging fruits, which are already in some way, shape, or form existing. And these could be really amazing starting points for people to already see what's going on and then try to replicate that in their part of the world.
I mean, what could be done, Pancharatna Prabhu, by the SPT is if there was a website that had this document, and then you could click on certain parts of the document where we know that these initiatives have already been started to some degree. And then that could take you to, where you could contact someone if you were interested in participating in taking that particular part forward. Like, is there a place where people are teaching, growing your own fiber and doing your own weaving? Is that already happening? Yeah. Is there a place in the university where they're already teaching consciousness studies, which is a fact? Where is that happening? Who's the contact person? And then you encourage people that if you're doing anything on that list, let us know, give us your contact info, give us your website or whatever, and we'll link to you. And then when people come to a temple, anyone who visits a temple, we can give them access to this. Here's this website, here's the 7 purposes, here's what we're aiming for, whether it's going to be 5 years from now or 200 years from now, here's what we're aiming for, here's what's already started, and here's where you can link into that.
Interesting.
And to have people, again, to see that, well, what service can I do? Oh, you can pull some weeds and wash some pots. But people have so many talents and so many interests and so many abilities. And if we say, okay, here you go. And there's this document, and there's this place over here, and you can click here and you can connect with this person and this person and this person. And then we actually build it.
So some final questions. First of all, here's one question from Anir Videshi: how to get involved in PhD level studies? I guess we'll take that offline, because that's got a lot of ways to answer that. Please, Anir, if you can just send us a message to GBC SPT, and we'll answer that personally. I have some closing questions, though. The first one, you said you did workshops. Are you doing more? Is this something that you or other members of your team are available to do workshops?
Well, I'm not sure about all the other members. I mean, we couldn't even contact all of them. It was kind of short notice for this. But I'm certainly happy to do some more. Sure. And I can also give the template for how I did them to anybody, so anybody could.
Okay. Yeah, that would be.
Already wrote up a template. Did a lot of them in Australia and New Zealand. That was the most, was in Australia and New Zealand.
Okay.
But I've done them in Europe and India and in North America. But yeah, there's a whole template. Anybody could take the document, take the template, and do it themselves.
And last question, is this a living document? Is this something that you envision will be, edited and grow or change or get more input?
Hopefully, yes, that's the idea.
Yeah,
that's the idea. The main thing is to shift our culture a little bit, and shift our culture to what is our vision, that we're not just here to get our Krishna prema and run, We're actually here to create a revolution in society. We're here to create a Krishna conscious world. Again, Srila Prabhupada didn't envision this as just taking care of our little personal sadhana. That's there and that's important. At the same time, we really are a very broad-minded mission, and to focus on that and to have, especially our leaders to focus on that.
Yes.
Where are we going? That every decision that we're making, every decision, big decision, small decision, should be aiming toward that vision, and to be regularly enthusing our members, however you want to define members, to be regularly enthusing our members that we're part of a greater vision. Your children, your grandchildren can fit into it, your aunts and uncles, your friends, your colleagues, your coworkers. There's a place where everybody can contribute to Mahaprabhu's vision and to Srila Prabhupada's vision.
Just to answer member, just for everyone's information, the GBC has actually, helped us. This is part of strategic planning and other efforts. We're worked around the world to kind of figure out how did Srila Prabhupada define a member of ISKCON, and give us some basic definitions. And you can find that at the website iskonconnection.org, which is a website particularly for the members of ISKCON to register themselves, although registration as a member is not a requirement. Prabhupada never insisted that every member of ISKCON has to sign up somewhere or be in a database, but he wanted a database of all the members of ISKCON. He wanted people's information, and he wanted everyone to be connected. And to be a member of ISKCON, according to our understanding, and the GBC is also the way it's been framed, is very, very simple. It's basically the first thing is you want to be a member of ISKCON. you desire it. It's something that you identify. It's basically a self-identification. And it's when you have accepted the teachings of Krishna as Srila Prabhupada has presented it, when you want to practically support the mission of the society and participate in its activities, you're a member. And you're welcome to the spiritual family of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So I do encourage everyone, if you haven't yet registered at iskonconnection.org, please do so. You'll get a weekly newsletter with ISKCON News, which is quite nice, and other information from SPT and other places. And so I do ask you also, the members here, to please take the time after this, if you're not already signed up with gbcspt.com to get newsletters, or we have a WhatsApp group as well to receive information about future broadcasts. We've been, by the way, for you, both of you, and our audience, the SPT has undergone a period of sort of reorganization. There's been a change of membership in the SPT. I've assumed the role as a facilitator, and we're trying to reorganize, and our attempt is to reorganize around how strategy can emerge out of vision and from leaders who are everywhere. We would like to say, you'd mentioned how the leaders of it, but you in the audience, you're also all leaders. Our definition of a leader is anyone who takes responsibility and to do something for the mission of Srila Prabhupada. Then you're a leader. And we want to serve you and help you. And with this and future broadcasts, seminars, workshops, and other resources. So thank you again to Urmila and Caitanya Bhava Prabhus for taking this time. I'm going to, we'll be in touch. We have our website, we have our groups. Let's keep this going. And we'll be talking in the next few days about future broadcasts around this, maybe starting to get into each one of the different purposes, because in this broadcast we just went into a whole overview, and maybe we could go one by one. Let's look at the first and the second and all of them, because each one, and I really, really encourage everyone to download the booklet, read it yourself, get inspired, and we'll be continuing this exploration of Srila Prabhupada's mission and vision. Thank you very, very much. Hare Krishna. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Oh, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much.